What's up, gamers? You want to know the best build for MOZE because you probably just pulled them while you were trying to pull for your mommy Fee Zhao, and now you want to use both on the same team, which we'll talk about later in the video. But we need to go over how he's actually built first and how he can actually function first. But before we do that, we actually need to get into the creator experience server, so let's go ahead and do that right now.
Hey gamers, what's up? Today we're going to HOYOverse's main offices to ask if we can get access to the creator experience server. Yeah, we're going to be there in a couple minutes now. I just want to go ahead and film this part while I'm outside. We'll also film when I'm about to enter the door because I want you guys to see my reaction when they finally let me in the creator experience server. And also, how else would I make a guide for MOZE if I wasn't in the server? Come on guys, we're obviously going to get access. Alright guys, so we're finally here outside the HOYOverse office. I cannot wait to get into the creator experience server. Let's go ahead and knock on the door and see if they'll let us in. Okay.
Hey, how are you doing today?
Hey, how are you doing? Yeah,
I'm doing good.
I was wanting the creator experience server.
Okay, what's your name? Sure.
My name is You Two Can't See Me.
Oh,
yep.
I know you. Actually, yeah, I do.
You know about me? That's great you know about me.
Yeah, I know you because you said something on all these characters.
Well,
and
I was just trying to inform the viewer.
Yeah,
I wasn't trying to be...
Hey, sorry, bud. That's not going to work.
But please don't, no. No, please don't close the door. No. Guys, they closed the door on me.
But now let's quickly go over a breakdown for how MOZE actually works, because he is honestly a very simple character when it comes to him playing, right? Basically, whenever he uses skill guides, he's going to be disappearing from the field, putting prey on one enemy, and then he cannot be targeted anymore, at least until his 9 charges are gone, because he gives himself 9 charges. What these 9 charges are going to do, guys, is every time your ally hits the enemy with prey on them, he is going to be using one of these stacks. Every 3 stacks will be activating his talent. His talent will be making him use 1 follow-up attack. After all 9 charges are used and or you kill the enemy, he'll be coming back to the field, so you'll have to re-proc that prey on some other enemy. So the really big thing here, guys, he works like Robin in a way, right? He completely disappears from the field though, meaning you can't be targeted with attacks, you can't be targeted with debuffs. He is going to get these hits guaranteed off as long as you're hitting the enemy, which could be good and bad in some scenarios. So you really want to be putting him on teams that are hitting quite frequently on the enemy, so you're able to go through these charges as fast as humanly possible. The one major difference though is the ultimate move. While you can't reuse Robin's ultimate move when you're in her concerto state, you can use his ultimate move whenever he's in his disappeared state, right? So say you get your ultimate up from doing follow-up attacks, you hit the ultimate, that's fine. He will also be doing 1 free follow-up attack while using the ultimate move. So he'll target one enemy, hit them, and then use a follow-up attack immediately after that. This does not consume any of his charges. Now let's quickly go over his bonus abilities, because this does really enhance his kit a lot too. First of all, guys, his action is going to be advanced whenever he's outside of this mode. This is going to make it so that whenever he's out of this mode, he's coming back in the action order quicker, so you can inflict prey on the enemy more often. So he's basically in that forgotten realm for longer, but essentially. So this means, spoiler warning, you don't have to build him on any speed because he's giving himself action advance forward. You don't need any speed here, and also speed doesn't play into like him using his follow-up attacks either, because he doesn't get any attacks in this state unless your allies attack. One of his other bonus abilities makes his ultimate move considered a follow-up attack, so any follow-up related buff or debuff you have on the enemy will also apply to his ultimate move as well. And then on top of this as well, he's inflicting a 25% like vulnerability debuff on the enemy. When prey is inflicted on the enemy, that means they will take 25% more follow-up damage, which is half of what Topaz can offer. And his final and probably biggest one he has, guys, is the ability to give himself 1 free skill point whenever he uses the talent's follow-up. Basically, you use a skill to get into this mode. The next follow-up he does, he will be regenerating 1 skill point. Even if you use the ultimate, it will be reprocking that talent follow-up, so he gets 1 free SP, so he's technically SP neutral. But with the kit breakdown out of the way now, let's go ahead now and talk about his best in slot light cones, which this should be a pretty short section if I'm being honest with you, because his light cone options are kind of niche. Like, a lot of his best in slot light cone options are gonna be like signature 5-star options, like Topaz light cone, like Dr. Ratio light cone. If you don't have those light cones, or maybe you're using them on someone else, then you're really not gonna use them there. But the big thing here, guys, he does have a really good free-to-play option, and on top of this, he has a fairly decent 4-star option as well. So his best in slot free-to-play light cone is gonna be cruising in the Stellar Sea. Now, the reason I say this is one of his best free-to-play light cones is because it's going to be giving him crit rate, which he desperately needs, and then on top of that, it'll be giving giving him attack as well. Now, the reason why I say he desperately needs crit rate is because his kit gives him a lot of crit damage. It doesn't give him much crit rate, so getting as much crit rate from free sources as possible is the best thing that I could recommend, right? You want as much free crit rate for him, or as much crit rate as possible on him. We'll get into the build and stats later on in the video, but just want to bring that up. This is probably going to be his best in slot light cone. This is probably going to be technically, I guess, his second best in slot light cone. What I think his best in slot light cone is, that is kind of like a match made in heaven for him, is actually swordplay. Swordplay at S5, let's be exact here, so he's getting as much damage boost as possible. But the reason I say this is because he literally cannot attack a second target. Now, of course, whenever prey wears off, you lose this, but he does so many different hits on the enemy. This makes it very, very good for him, because you have to think every single time your ally does an attack on the enemy, he does a pseudo attack on the enemy, which means after you've gotten 5 stacks down, which leaves room exactly for 2 more follow-ups, he's going to be hitting max damage on both of those follow-ups. Not to mention, if you use the ultimate move as well, that'll be tacking on even more damage. So I think swordplay is going to be the best in slot light cone, because we're talking, if you have this light cone at S5, you're giving him an 80% damage bonus, and considering he cannot target any other enemies anyways, when in this departed state, this is going to be hands down the best light cone. You just need to make sure that your crit ratios are in check, because you want to make sure that he's actually critting on the enemy, so he's getting the extra damage bonus added onto the crit damage. So now I want to go ahead and hop into what his best in slot relic set, stats, everything like that are. Oh, and pause and stop right there. If you thought the intro was cringy and you wanted to skip past it, you got stopped right here. Subscribe to the channel. I just scammed you. You might as well hit that subscribe button. You either watched to this point in the video or got scammed by that timestamp, so hit that subscribe button now. So guys, what I think to be his best in slot 4-piece set is actually a 4-piece Pioneer. The Pioneer set is going to be giving him 12% increased damage to debuffed enemies, which he automatically does with his skill move. His skill inflicts prey on the enemy, which is a debuff, which also plays into the 4-piece set as well, because the 4-piece set, guys, is going to be increasing his crit rate by 4%, and then the crit damage by 8 to 12%, depending on how many debuffs are on the enemy. And if you're using him in a follow-up adjacent team, you are probably going to have at least 3 debuffs on the enemy at all times. And considering that we're implanting that debuff with prey on the enemy, you're going to be doubling these effects. So we're talking here at max tilt, he is going to be getting 8% crit rate, 24% crit damage, and this lasts for 1 turn. And the big thing here, guys, when he's in departed state, his turn never recycles. So with that logic in mind, you should be having this buff off the full time he's in the departed state, which means you are going to be having an 8% crit rate buff, 24% crit damage buff, which is absolutely insane. Now let's take that and compare it to the wind soaring set, because at a 2-piece it's going to be giving you 12% attack, and at a 4-piece it's going to be increasing the crit rate by 6%, and then after the user uses a follow-up attack, the ultimate damage is increased by 36% for 1 turn. The reason I say that here is because this really only affects the ultimate move and gives him 6% crit rate, while the other set gives him 8% crit rate. It gives him more free crit rate, and then on top of that, it's giving him a more universal 24% crit damage, while as you can see, it gives him a 36% buff only to his ultimate move, which is good, don't get me wrong, but I think I prefer having the increased crit rate and the increased crit damage. Now let's go ahead and talk about the third best set right now, which could technically take this spot for first best in slot like relic set, but it really just depends on how many debuffs you have on the enemy. If you have a team that doesn't put many debuffs on the enemy, and he cannot take full use of like the full Pioneer set, then probably a 4-piece Fua set would help out here. Gives him increased follow-up damage, and then on top of that, for every single hit he gets, he's going to be getting an attack buff as well. And considering his follow-up attack hits the enemy so many times, you'll be able to easily stack this ability up. Like I said though, it really is just going to depend on how many debuffs you can put on the enemy. If you're putting a good amount of debuffs on the enemy, then hey yo, that's the set to go to. I think the Wind Valor set could be really good, especially if you've just been farming Break Effect, like if you were farming for Firefly or something. I think that could be a great set to use. It's like if you've just been farming that set and you have a fuck ton of these sets, right? I think that could be a very decent set to use. So those are my thoughts on the 4-piece relic sets. Let's now talk about the 2-piece planar sets. So guys, number 1 best in slot planar set is the new Duran set. Duran is absolutely amazing because it practically gives you a 25% increase to follow-up damage and then a 25% increase to crit damage as well, which is super good for any follow-up type character. This is by far, I think, the best in slot set for follow-up related characters. Now, if you didn't want to farm this for whatever reason, that's fine. There are other sets you can use, like Salsado. It gives you a guaranteed 8% crit rate. It also helps with follow-up damage as well, so that is another set you could run on him if you're really struggling with crit rate. And then one final set I want to mention here. Inazuma, while it doesn't give you a damage bonus, it gives you an attack bonus, and then if you're running another hunt character on the team, you'll be getting a 12% crit rate bonus as well. So if you're really struggling with crit rate, this is going to be another viable set that you can run, guys. It really is just going to depend on what your crit rate looks like, which we're going to talk about right now, because we're about to get into the main and substats and recommended stats that you need for your Mr. Mozambique. That's for all the Apex players out there. Now, guys, for the boots, you're going to be wanting attack percentage, on the body crit rate, crit damage, on the rope attack percentage, and then finally on the orb lightning damage or attack percentage here. Now, guys, like I was saying, he goes into a departed state whenever he uses his skill move, meaning you don't need any speed here at all because there is no action order involved with what he is doing. So give him attack boots, give him as much attack and damage as absolutely possible. That's just the best way to run him, right? And now the reason I put crit rate over crit damage is because of the recommended stats you're going to be wanting to hit, which we'll talk about right now, because he's going to be wanting to get crit rate, crit damage, and attack percentage. And as far as those recommended stats go, on the crit rate, at least 80%, on the crit damage, at least 140%, and on the attack percentage, at least 2800. Now, the reason why I'm recommending to get the crit rate at least 80%, and you can kind of outweigh that crit damage value, because a lot of the characters that you use with follow-up teams actually give the team quite a bit of crit damage. If you have Robin on the team, that's like a free 40% crit damage. So you can kind of undervalue some of the crit damage here just to ensure that he's getting the best crit rate possible, so he's critting as much as often. So this is why I say you can kind of like lean off of like focusing so hard on crit damage, get more crit rate for him, and then if you have the correct team, they can actually supplement him in getting the correct crit damage. Now, with that out of the way, we just mentioned teams. Let's go ahead now and talk about his best in-slot teams, because I cannot wait to use him on certain teams, guys. So, guys, I think the elephant in the room here, Fijao. Is he good? I think he works with Fijao quite nice. Now, I do think you are going to need an additional pillar on that team to really make him pop off. And what do I mean by pillar? Either Robin, Aventurine, or Topaz on that team. You're going to be wanting one of those characters on the team to really make sure he's going through and getting through as many of these charges as humanly possible, so he's hitting as many follow-ups as possible, which then in turn gives Fijao more stacks, which then in turn makes your Fijao a happy girl there. So I think he works in a team with Fijao as long as you have one of the other pillars, that being Robin, Aventurine, or Topaz. And with that being said, obviously he will work with any of those characters as well. But not only that, I also think he works pretty well on just a team with March 7th, just because of how many times he's able to like hit the enemy. I think pairing him up with March 7th, because maybe you didn't get Fijao right, you just got a MOZE, maybe you pulled on Robin's banner right, I think he works really well there too. So you run a team with Robin, March 7th, and him on the team, I think you're going to have a great day there too. Now, one really interesting team comp that I love to see, or I want to run so bad, I love Dr. Ratio, right? And I don't love Dr. Ratio in terms of kind of what he does, right? I love Dr. Ratio for the fact that I can use him with Luca. And now I can use him with another strong boy MOZE, because he automatically inflicts one debuff on the enemy regardless. So this is actually already looking good for Dr. Ratio. And the amount of times that Dr. Ratio attacks, you have to think, guys, Dr. Ratio does attack, and then step, and then pop, and then hits the enemy again. So that's really nice. And then you can throw the pillar on him, which increases crit damage by 40%, which means you're able to now focus more crit rate on Dr. It just seems like a good time. I'm gonna stop now. I'm about to, oh man, I'm about to, oh, my pants. So I will be making a video with him and Dr. Ratio. Trust that one, gamers. Now let's go ahead and talk about the final option here. Miss Yunli. I think Yunli actually works really well. She can hit the enemy so many times as long as she's being attacked. I think she works exceptionally well with him, because as long as she's getting attacked and hitting the enemies, he is hitting the enemies as well. I think you'll have a great time with that as well. But the main thing here is, right, if you notice all the options I mentioned, he is more of a sub DPS damage dealer rather than a main DPS damage dealer. So as long as you have like a main DPS on the team that's able to deal a substantial amount of damage, he works really good as a sub to that. So with that being said, guys, that's going to do it for our MOZE guide today. If you enjoyed it, please hit that subscribe button. Anyways, gamers, that's going to do it for me. Hope you enjoyed. Hopefully your pulls for Fijao or Robin went well. Let me know in the comment section down below if they did, because this video will be coming out before. So if you're watching it after, then yeah, let me know. Anyway, bye guys. See you later. Let me in the creator experience server, you dumb bastards.